Thanks for coming out tonight. Isn't this great to hear this film in an actual theater with the sound system?
Oh, yeah.
It should be. My name's Matt Carey. I'm the documentary editor at Deadline.com, and I would like to welcome to the stage, I recognize this gentleman. This is R.J. Cutler, the director and producer of the film. We are also joined by Jenna Rosher, the cinematographer, and by the two editors of the film, Greg Finton and Lindsay Utz. Welcome. This will stick out this seat here, but make yourselves comfortable. It's good.
That was a blast.
Yeah, it really deserves to be enjoyed on the big screen, you know, especially for the sound. I mean,
yeah, just the whole journey. I have to, if I may, to begin. You know, it was so. As you all know, this was our first screening with an audience. So before the screening, I missed the opportunity to thank a few people. I want to thank our dear friends at Apple who made this possible. Our friends at Interscope who made the film possible. All of the people in Billie world, her whole team, and most of all, of course, her family, Billie and her family, Billie and Phineas and Maggie and Patrick. You all can see they trusted us, this group of people, and Trevor Smith, who's in the back. It was a tiny little team. They brought us into their lives, into their family, into their world. They put their faith in us, let us tell their story. They gave us, Maggie gave us hard drive after hard drive of her own footage, and as they do in all aspects of their lives and their art, they told the truth, and they embraced my vision for it and our vision, and supported us in telling it and let us do our thing in this way that has meant so much to all of us in our lives and our work, and we're so grateful.
When did you first become familiar with Billie Eilish's music, and then how did the project come about?
I became familiar with her music. I mean, I had heard Ocean Eyes. But I became really familiar with her when I received a phone call saying that, asking if I'd like to meet Billie Eilish and head over to Highland Park and take a meeting with her because she was interested in having a film made about the year that was coming up ahead. And I quickly listened to the EP, and there was an EP out. There were maybe a dozen songs, but so many different things online, and familiarized myself enough to really raise my curiosity. But the film came about when we met, and that's what really made me certain and excited that there was a film there. It was going into their house. It was meeting Maggie and Patrick and Phineas, and most of all, it was meeting Billie. And we had I think from the beginning, a real connection. Those who know me best know that I don't kid when I say that I identify as a teenage girl, and I pointed that out, to Billie, and when we met, and she had thoughts about what this experience might be, and I explained to her what our process would be, and we were kind of off and running from moment one.
And Jenna, for you, one of the incredible things about the film is how intimate it is. It just feels like a very, very intimate experience, including the performance of her on stage. And oftentimes, I think the way that's shot, it's jib shots and all this sort of thing. This is really intimate. But tell me about your approach to shooting it.
Well, it was really a conversation between RJ and I, because I think we went to most of these shows with one camera, and of course I feel this obligation to capture the show from as many perspectives as I can, which is pretty much impossible. And RJ really gave me this sort of blessing note, which was just stay with Billie. So just hunker down and be with her. And it was so liberating because then I could just really be with her and feel her and not have to so much worry about like covering the song. It was just sit with the song and find the frame and don't move. And it was really just, I watch it now and I think, oh gosh, I remember being in that moment and I wasn't in a frenzy trying to cover it, I was just with her. So yeah, it was really, that was
You
our
must,
approach.
you must have developed quite a trusting relationship with her as well, because, you know, that's a vulnerable space to be on stage, you know?
Yeah, it was really incredible. I think we talked a lot about where she wanted me to be, what felt right, so I wasn't distracting, but she wanted me there. And there's just some funny moments, especially when the last shot of the film was orchestrated by Billie. And, much to some of her management's dismay, we walked up the stairway alongside Radio City, kind of spontaneously, really. We kind of worked it out in the sound check, but ultimately went up this side stairway, which really isn't much of a real stairway, and it has a floating wall, so it's not really what I would call safe. But we worked it out, and she wanted me there, and there was often times where she would just kind of direct me into where I should be on stage so that it felt right for her and it felt right for Phineas. So, and it was just, I loved being up there with her. It was great. I just kind of got lost in the show, and of course, show after show, I got to get a sense of her movements and where'd she be, and so it was a bit of a dance that I got to figure out.
And not just, first of all, I can't tell you the number of times I heard Billie say to people on her team, wherever Jenna wants to be, it's okay, wherever she wants to be. But also, think about where Jenna was in that car ride at the end of the film when Billie is recounting this moment in her life on Grammy Day. They're in this tiny car with it. Jenna's got a dog between her legs, and Billie's driving, and the Challenger's, I mean, that's a good car for a 19-year-old, an 17-year-old to get into, but with that equipment, and then in this tiny little house, to fit in and to not fade into the woodwork, but to be a person with presence in the room recording. It was just beautiful, and you see the results. You refer to it as intimate, and that's what it is in the deepest way.
And for Greg and Lindsay, you got to work with the music stems. I'm borrowing that term from RJ. Not being someone who knows a lot about music, I can sort of guess what that is, but what did that open up for you in terms of editing the film?
It just gave us so much freedom, obviously. I mean, some of our earliest conversations were, are we gonna have a composer? Should we have it be all their music? I felt strongly on trying to keep it all their music, and I think everyone did, really. So, I mean, what it really did was allow us to play their music as score, for those moments where you just want to feel what she's feeling or whatever at that point, and we could pull out certain instrumentation. We could, sort of highlight other emotional aspects of these tracks, and I mean, it just gave us so much freedom, and yeah, I'd say it allowed us to treat it like score.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And for Lindsay, this film has so many different moods, I think, and tones, and you use the music beautifully to evoke that and transition between moments. But boy, you really go on a heck of a journey. I think as an editor, that would be quite an interesting challenge to let moments play out for a long time so that they have emotional resonance. But
Right.
then those turns to other moods are interesting for an editor.
Yeah, I think one of the things I always try to bottle up inside of me when I'm watching raw material is the way it made me feel the first time I saw it. Because for an audience, that's going to be their experience. And a lot of times, as an editor, your job is to show restraint. And that was something that I think we really tried to do with this material, was not overcut it or make it too flashy in spots. We really wanted to let it breathe and let the images tell the story so that you could be with Billie in this really intimate way and honor the way that these guys shot the film and just the experience of being on this journey with her. And it was really special that we were able to do that and able to let the film breathe and kind of sit at this runtime and be at, these concerts with her and watch her perform, because you can't really understand Billie Eilish unless you watch her perform and understand the connection that she has with her fans. And that was something we wanted to let unfold in a really natural way. So I'm really proud of what we did on that front.
The audience, connection with their audience is absolutely stunning. And it feels authentic. You see the emotion of these, particularly girls, but I'm sure all sorts of people. I was emotional watching it.
Sure.
It stirs me.
Sure. Well, I'll confess that these guys love to make fun of how easy it is for me to cry watching this movie. But yeah, powerful stuff.
And RJ, you are going to receive the Pennebaker Award next month from the Critics' Choice Awards in New York. Congratulations. Which is a lifetime honor, and it is named after a man you knew well,
Yeah.
T.A. Pennebaker. And I wanted to mention that, but also it's interesting to see your filmmaking style, and of course you go way back with both Chris Hegedus and T.A. Pennebaker. But you've described that your filmmaking here is neo-verite. Explain that.
Well, first I'll say that the foundation of the filmmaking is every bit in the lessons that Chris Hegedus and D.A. Pennebaker taught me when I produced The War Room, which was the first film that I made and they directed, and it was like a master class in verite filmmaking, and everything we all would talk about every day, including fundamentally that you're in a relationship of trust, and that you need to be in the moment, and there's so many principles that Penny and Chris taught me, and that is the foundation of this work. But what we have in this film that the great verite masters didn't have when they were making their masterpieces in the 60s and 70s. We think of a film like Don't Look Back or Monterey Pop that Pennebaker made, or Give Me Shelter that the Maisels made, or any one of them was mom with an iPhone. And we have mom with an iPhone, and we have Billie Eilish holding a camera, just making notes to the director of the video. It's one of the first things you see. It's the way her parents are brought on stage. It's the way her Pepper, her dog, is brought on stage. It's the way the backyard is brought on stage, but it's also the way you first encounter her. You see her perform and you see her write, but then you realize this visionary, her work is going to expand into her video making and the vision that she has, and the authenticity and the certainty. You see that through a camera that she's holding. This allows us to kind of enter a whole new level of storytelling, because let's face it, there's so many people holding their cameras right now, looking at us. This device, the camera, is a big part of our lives, our culture, our society, who we are at this moment. And if you're going to make a verite film, to have the access to that, there's an incredibly powerful scene in this movie shot in Milan, and we all were here. We weren't even there, and that's when Billie tears the ligaments in her ankles. That's all shot by various people holding iPhones, not just Maggie, but different people at different, and we collected as much as we could get our hands on, and Greg Lindsay cut it so beautifully, so powerfully, that it feels every bit as powerful as a scene that Jenna shot.
And you mentioned Give Me Shelter, Joan Churchill shot at least part of that film.
Sure.
I was just speaking with her last week. She's going to be getting an award at Dark
Yes.
NYC. Which
Yes,
is
we're very
wonderful.
excited. And Joan shot my first TV series, and also was a great mentor to me. Joan and Alan Barker were one of the crews on American High, which was the first TV show I did, and how I met Greg Finton, and our first show together. So
It's the whole reason why I got into documentary film. It was my first unscripted experience, and I've only done unscripted since then.
Well, I mentioned Joan because she was telling me, and we were speaking about kind of the guiding philosophy that in her kind of shooting, the kind of shooting that D.A. Pennebaker was known for, it's not about getting what you want, it's about wanting what you get.
Well, it's a beautiful thing for her to have said, and I'm sure these, you know, you don't. My description of it is that you don't want. The only thing you can want is to see. You can't want anything from your subjects, and you let go of that. So really, what's left is to experience their lives with them and to see that as clearly as possible, so that you can convey it in the narrative of your film as truthfully as possible. And that's kind of what we do all day long, right? I'm curious what.
Well, we always say, like, you know, we're not, the whole fly on the wall thing is just absurd, because we're not flies, we're human beings, and so it's an honor and a blessing to be invited into someone's world and someone's home, and it's a privilege. So just being holding the space and being witness to their life, and having a relationship with this person, it's the foundation of the whole sort of trust, making process. So.
And you described this process. I said when I first met the family, this is the kind of thing we talked about. And Penny always used to say, you tell them what you're going to do, and then about 9 months, 10 months into you doing it, if you're going to film for a year, they kind of look at you and they're like, my God, you actually, it's what you did. And then the floodgates open, and it's always something different. In the case of this film, it was The Notebook. Then The Notebook opened. What Billie had kind of, the thing that she had not revealed to us, the covering, the wall was covered before she shared it with us. And that's if for the verite filmmakers, we don't talk a lot about that kind of the nature of that moment, but it's when the subject, Penny used to say, they're going to take you by the hand and they're going to say, come, you got to see this. And that's a big part of the process that happens, and it if you do your job right, you get there. So.
And for Greg and Lindsay, what were the most difficult or challenging parts of the film to cut?
Everything.
Well, I mean, we were so blessed with such an incredible family to work with, and Billie just being such an open character on screen, and the intimacy that you guys got. I mean, so that's the biggest gift as an editor, is to have that kind of material to work with. So I don't know. I mean, it was such a joy to cut this film. I would say the hardest thing to crack was kind of finding the right proportion between the musical performances and the verite footage. Well, it's all verite footage, but the scenes outside of the musical performances, and trying to strike a balance between those concerts not being a detour from the narrative of the film, but instead really deepening our understanding of the emotional story and of Billie's journey. And so finding that proportion was tough. We had cuts where there was too much music or not enough music, and that's just a kind of dance that you do until the end, and you kind of try to crack it,
And it really was an embarrassment of riches, Some of you probably heard us say before, but our first cut really was 24 hours long on this.
And then it was 30 hours long.
And then it got longer. That first 24-hour cut took us an entire week to screen it, and then we added 6 more hours after that, and then we finally started, trying to make the more difficult decisions. And
but I like how RJ always describes it as a tomato sauce, as like a simmering pot of.
Well, there's so many fun metaphors that you get to work with in this.
Yeah.
But it is a sauce. It is like cooking in a reduction, and you're reducing. Sometimes you're building up. Sometimes you make a film and you don't have enough or you don't have an overwhelming amount, and you're building up from the moments, the key moments that you have. Other times, you know, another metaphor we use is the lump of clay. This was a big lump of clay, and carving away at it. By the way, we weren't crazy. We didn't go from 24 to 30 because we didn't think 24 was enough. They're late. While we were editing, there was occasion to go back and shoot Billy, and so the first assembly of what we shot for a few days was the other 6 hours, and then we were like, yeah, we don't need that. No, that went away. But it was, I will say, you don't want to watch the 24 hours. Some Billy fans might, and one day perhaps you'll have the chance to do it. But it's not all that different from this, except this is reduced, and the beats are fundamentally the same. The beats are fundamentally the same, and the journey is fundamentally the same. But over time,
the style was like, you know, the style was developed in that first pass, and you know, I've never done a film like this where you know, there's not a single still photo in the film. There's not a lower third identification, anything. It is just strictly.
It's so interesting you mentioned. Now, yes, of course, there was no still photo, but yeah, how rare is that?
Well, you often need it. You know, you need it. We didn't need on this, I mean, say, I think from my perspective, the most challenging parts were the not just the proportion of music to verite, which, because as Lindsay described, we were attempting to make a musical, and in a musical, the songs aren't just their character, their drama, their emotion, their content. The lyrics are content. So there's all of that, and that's what we needed to do. But there's also the past, and how the past informs the present. That little section at the beginning of the film where Billy says our whole family was one big effing song, that is a journey. Where that goes in the film, what it's going to be, how it works. It's not the very beginning. How the very beginning is oceanized. Where that goes, how it goes, were things we worked a lot with in many different places over time, and then sometimes the hard thing is being steely nerved. You know, God bless these guys. They not without debate, we settled very early on with Bored at the beginning, the performance of Bored, which is, you know, it's kind of a really bold thing to begin with a full song and performed in that way, and we saw it as a kind of incantation. You know, this is going to be a long journey. Come settle in. We thought to ourselves in the theater you're in, but it turned out for most people in their homes, settle in, because we're going on a ride. This isn't going to be a rat-a-tat kind of experience. It's going to be a journey through this extraordinary artist's coming of age as an artist and coming of age as a young woman. And we're going to experience that together now, and we use that song to settle the audience in, and I dare say we didn't change a frame of it from cut one.
No.
You know, thrilled to have seen it on the screen now, because it's never looked that good in any experience I've ever had.
One of my favorite moments or sequences in the film is when she meets Justin Bieber in person.
I can't believe we've spent this much time talking about the movie. We haven't mentioned the co-star, the romantic interest.
Well, it's so touching. I must say, I was very, very touched at just kind of Justin's tenderness and you know, deep understanding of clearly what Billy is in the process of going through that he went through. But I also bring up his name because there's a concert documentary about him that's coming out this weekend. But that's very much one where, you know, he's like the executive producer. He's involved with it. And we're seeing a lot of these kind of music documentaries where the subject is, in effect, controlling the content in some way. It's important to note in this film that as we discussed before, you had final cut. I mean, that's
sure.
critical.
Yes, and it's another thing we discussed in the backyard day one. As I say to all of my subjects when I meet them the first time, because you want to make sure that you're on the same page. If we're going to spend 2 years, a year shooting a film, a year editing a film, maybe more than a year sharing it with the world, that's 3 years. And we want the world to take it seriously, and the world is not going to take, in my estimation, a film seriously that the subject has the final decision-making, editorial control over. They want the film made by a filmmaker, and that was the end of it. There was no other discussion. Billy got it, Maggie got it, Phineas got it. They all they understood, and there was never a question. This does not mean that they don't look at the film and have thoughtful, exciting things to say about it when you're almost done and it's informative. But it also doesn't mean that we don't fundamentally understand that the story we are telling belongs to them, not to us. And that goes to what we were talking about not wanting. I may have a final cut, but it's not. It's their lives, and so we take very seriously our responsibility to be truthful. And certainly, I don't believe it's ever happened. Maybe Dick Cheney thought we made a movie about Dick Cheney, and maybe he thought, that it wasn't there was a thing or two in there that he would have told differently. But I've never really experienced somebody saying that's not true, and certainly that was the case here. So. I can't speak to other people's experience in other films. I just know that in the work that we do, it's very important for the filmmaker to have final cut, and the subjects embrace that. Billie is a woman who is in control of every aspect of her artistic and creative life. She is the boss. But the one thing I never experienced her wanting to control was this film.
Yeah, and you referenced, kind of her directing that music video or having a director sensibility.
She's brilliant.
I have a feeling
she's shockingly, that video is shocking, that she could design that video with mom in the backyard, and then you see it, and that she was able to communicate that vision through a director. So she actually had an obstacle, somebody whose job it was to do what he wanted. It's incredible, and then you see it at Coachella, and it's like, oh my! And Maggie tries to convince her not to do it. People don't want to look at your video; they want to look at you. And then you see, and you realize, my God, she's right. Her vision is like, it's enough to entrance 150,000 people in the desert, and she sees it all. Anyway, we like Billie Eilish. She's okay.
So Jenna, do you have a favorite moment that you either shot or just a favorite moment in the film?
Wow, well, I have a few. Going back to Coachella, I just went after the show, just being with her in that moment, when her family's trying to reassure her and console her, and I could just feel, and being her age at one time and being sort of heartbroken or disappointed by whoever's your, love interest, and I just really felt that with her in that moment. And it's so beautifully edited, you guys. I mean, it's just the way it transcends into her throwing her phone, and then she's literally kind of borderline. She's in a daze, and just sticking with her again, and just it really just felt for her there. It was also the moment, which really came as a surprise to us, was when Billie got her license, and she left. None of us had any idea. We knew we were gonna, film Billie hopefully getting her license. Had no idea that we were gonna be witnessing two parents like watching their child basically drive away for the first time, and that was incredibly impactful and just one of those moments where I think after that day ended, we would always sort of get back in the van together and have our discussions, and I was blown away. I just looked at RJ and I said, I can't believe that just happened. Like, we just literally watched Maggie go through the process of loss and having to let go and not even being able to say goodbye, and then navigating, they don't even have the share the location app, and I mean, it's like moments like that, you're just thinking, it's the unexpected always for me.
Yeah.
Never knew how Coachella was going to be for Billie, never knew how that moment was going to be for her parents, so, and again, these are just gifts of being a witness to it, and as a parent, sitting there listening to Patrick talk about that, and me going, oh my God, it's gonna happen one day soon, feeling that, and for RJ as well, and so, and for you guys as well, watching it and editing it still makes me cry. It's so profound,
But and it's also it's also another one of those moments that's a byproduct. We'd spent a lot of time together, so Patrick felt in this moment fully comfortable being himself. Jenna mentioned that we kind of encourage people not to use the fly on the wall analogy because, as she said, we're not flies on a wall. We're people in a room. One of us just has a camera. One of us a big guy with a beard, and then there's Jay, who's got a long pole with a microphone on the end of it. But what we want is for our subjects to be as comfortable being themselves with us as they would be with anyone with whom they're fully comfortable being themselves. And that means that it's they trust us, and they trust us enough to be themselves when they're with us. And there were a lot of people in Billie's life who were like that. So it was great.
And we only have time for a little bit left in our discussion, but for Greg and Lindsay, favorite moments.
Oh, jeez. Does it still work?
That's
Hello?
a good one.
Yeah, it still works.
Yeah.
Not the first piece of equipment Lindsay has broken.
You go first.
There's so many favorite moments. I mean, certainly the scene, that moment with Patrick is one of my all-time favorites. I remember RJ gave us this incredible gift when we started the film. When Lindsay and I started, was he said to us, just spend a month or 6 weeks, however long it was, just screening footage. And don't even think about editing or anything. And it wasn't go in our rooms and you screen half the footage and I screen half, we screened together. And I remember to this day, I remembered when we were watching it that we saw that scene the very first day, and we were like, wow. I was so blown away by that. So that's certainly one of my all-time favorite moments. And all the concert footage and all the concerts that we never got to, you never got to see her at all, right? I was lucky enough to get to see her play here at the Greek one show, but yeah, the concert stuff was fantastic.
I think the opening performance is the scene I love the most. I think just because it captures Billie at this moment in her career where she's still playing at these small clubs, and it's so intimate, and she looks so young. She's only 16, I think, in that performance. And when you work on those moments in a film as an editor, you try to imagine what is this going to feel like 30, 40 years from now. And that is a scene to me that feels like a piece of music history, and I just am always moved by it every time I see it.
Can I throw one last scene into her collection? It's not favorites because they're all favorites. But this is consistent with what we're talking about when the subject takes you. You're not allowed to shoot at the Grammys. You can't have a crew at the Grammys. The Grammys has their own crew, and I think it's CBS has you're not allowed. Jenna's not allowed at the Grammys, but Billie Eilish's friend Jenna is allowed to be part of her entourage with an iPhone. And damn if Jenna didn't shoot the hell out of that scene, and if she wasn't right there with Billie, present in the moment, Justin Bieber called. And that's a kind of remarkable moment to have captured, particularly in a place you're not allowed to be. And so that's thank you, God.
I want to give a shout out to one other person here, Shauna Hagan, who also, she's my wing woman at the Grammys. She filmed a lot of the coverage of
Yes,
Billie
she did,
as
and,
well.
and other footage throughout those.
Yeah, she sure did. Thanks, Shauna.
Hi, Shauna.
Well, congratulations to all of you. I think it's just a fantastic film, to R.J. Cutler, and to the editors, Greg and Lindsay, and to Jenna Rosher, who shot the film.
And Trevor Smith in the house, our producer.
Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you guys. Thank you all.
Filmmakers.
You'll always be our first.